Hey everybody, this is Sheets, and I have Will Patterson on here, otherwise known as Will, otherwise known as Counter-Strike Crusher of all time, otherwise known as Sabersim projection and simulation guru, otherwise known as pretty just sharp young dude. And I have plenty of respect for everybody that fits in that type of category. Welcome, Will. So Will, this is what I like to do. When I started this with Bobby, this site, people just kind of ask me, what I do and how I play and things like that. And I really want to make this entire process kind of about education. So whenever there's something that I'm learning or don't know anything about, I rather just bring experts in than me just try to make it up. Okay. My dad I consider him the smartest person on the face of the earth. And he always told me that the smartest one is the one who realizes that he's not always the smartest person in the room. And as you kind of get older, Will, you'll start to learn this a little bit more yourself. What are you, 22, 23?
23.
23. So when I was 22, 23, I was the smartest person in the world. I mean, really, but not only was I the smartest person in the world, I kind of had disdain for like everybody that was like not as smart as I was. I'm like, how can you be this stupid? And you'll grow out of that. And then as you kind of get older, you'll start to really, really super duper respect like the genius of everybody else. And that's where I am kind of in life right now. So when I'm doing this DFS thing, I really just respect just all the input of everybody and this, that, and the other thing. So tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got involved in Sabersim, how you got involved in Counter-Strike, how you got involved in gambling. Where'd you come from?
Yeah, so I was actually a finance person to start. So I started trading stocks when I was like 12. My parents would come in and they're just like, all right, once a month they would like sit me down and talk to me about stocks. And then when I was like 16, I asked for a access pass to a algorithm programming site. And I just started, writing up the little algorithms, and they slowly got better. And then I went to college for finance, and right out of that, I got a job at a local financial advisor, sort of coming up with some of our strategies, codifying them, and etc. And then when the pandemic happened, I was just like bored and at home and not a lot to do. And then I started with iRacing, and I made like an Excel sheet that would simulate it. And then one of my friends is just like, hey man, you should play Counter-Strike. It's pretty fun. It runs all day. So like you just watch it while it goes on. And then I just started pulling into stats and slowly building and developing it over time.
So you touch upon an interesting point, which I really think about a lot. So do you play Counter-Strike, or are you just interested in the data and kind of like the puzzle and that goes along with it?
Yeah. So I started playing Counter-Strike probably 6 months after playing it in DFS. So I like started because I did not play a lot of video games growing up. I just didn't really have them. So I'm very bad at it. But like watching it day in and day out and having built the model, I was like, I should probably play the game. But it was definitely data side first. And then I was like, oh, I actually really like this game. So.
Well, because it's interesting, because people that are really good at DFS and really good at what we and what you do, they come from different parts of it. Like some people just have played the game for like so long, and then they decided that they want to figure out how to bet on it. And then some people only figured out how to bet on it, and they want to find other things to bet on. And other people just could care less about the actual underlying game and want to just figure out what the numbers mean, and I don't know if but I'm from that background as well. I've run a hedge fund for 20 years, and I find the whole thing just kind of incredibly interesting. I could care less about League of Legends. I could care less about really all of this stuff. But I just find that the different puzzles and how the different sports are different and how correlation changes between one sport and the other, I just find that really, really interesting. So we're kind of similar, I guess, in that way. So here are the questions I like to ask. First of all, with respect to Counter-Strike specifically, just for DFS, for example, we'll talk about maybe prize picks and stuff like that, which to me is a little less interesting. But with respect to DFS, I guess I'll ask you this, and this is a really tough question for you to answer, honestly. I want to ask you, what type of edge do you think there is? Let's say somebody wanted to get into Counter-Strike as kind of part of their DFS portfolio, or just wanted to play DFS. What type of edge do you think there is in Counter-Strike? And when I ask that, I don't mean what kind of edge you have. You know what I mean? But if there was a person who wanted to get involved in it, like can you make money? And then even if you can't make money, it might be just fun, but whatever. But what type of edge do you think there is in this particular sport?
I think, well, part of it depends on like your realization timeline, but like obviously underdogs are just always underowned when you're like, when the industry standards a mean projection, and sports like League of Legends or Counter-Strike where like a win is, it's a bimodal distribution. Like it's either you have a distribution and a win and distribution and a loss. And so underdogs are always going to project horribly. They're going to go under own. But the problem is like, if they're a really big underdog, they're only going to win 10, 15% of the time. So I feel like there's always EV in playing those underdogs. But again, like the realization timeline of how many slates do you have to continue to play dogs to realize that edge?
Well, let me put it to you another way. So what, even be more cynical. What you just said, okay, makes sense to me. How many players just completely understand what you just said? In other words, like what do enough people play Counter-Strike that what you said is just kind of accepted theory, and that you're just spinning your wheels, and the only people that are playing are total experts that are doing whatever, or is there some way to like be a smart guy? I'm not saying that you can be a stupid guy and just do random lineups and win at the sport, but if you want to put in a little bit of work, how would you rate the ability to make money? Even given that you have a good timeline and your discipline and things like that, how would you compare something like Counter-Strike to, say, I don't know, like baseball, or to say League of Legends, or to say basketball? I don't know what other sports do you play.
Yeah, my main two are Counter-Strike and UFC, and then
that's right. I remember that.
Yeah, and then League of Legends is something that we've been working on, so I've been trying to dip my toe in there. But yeah, I mean, Counter-Strike is by far my highest EV sport. Like I think I'm running like a 40% ROI over the last year or so. And I think the field is just not that sharp in it yet. And I'm not sure really if it will be. Like it is surprising to me that it's just consistently people are jamming in top owned players. So
look at this. So here's just the typical lobby I have up here. This is the live one. And just so you know, Will, you want to talk about being completely transparent? I can't even play. They don't even let me play it. I think they don't let me play in New York.
Oh yeah.
So this is legitimately just doing this for the people. You know what I mean? I literally cannot play this. The only thing I can ever do is play. I did it once just for fun. I did a prize picks with whatever, just so it's totally uninteresting to me. I didn't like sweating it. I don't like it's like higher or whatever. But so when I look at this, I look at the prize pools, and the prize pools are very similar to your typical League of Legends pools. Typically the same amount of entries, typically the same amount of 5K for first in the lottery, and maybe 2K for first in the single entry, the bigger buy-in or stuff like that. So I guess the same number of people and the same distribution of results kind of happens. The one thing I ask you is, so the one thing I noticed different between this and League of Legends is there's no team spot. So you have only 6 spots in a captain as opposed to 7 spots in a captain. Mm-hmm. What is the dupe rate for a sport like Counter-Strike compared to something like League of Legends?
So again, like slate size and odds are like the biggest factor of that. So like if I think there was a couple of days ago where it was like 2 -400 favorites, and like the winning lineup was duped like 20 times, because that's it. When given the fact that there's no team spot, which again reduces like complexity of like the number of possible builds. There is quite a lot of dupes. I think versus League of Legends, it's not quite that bad, because I think League of Legends, everyone's kind of settled on 4-3, if I recall. Like everyone just does like a 4 and 3 stack. So like in Counter-Strike, especially on a 2-game slate, like you can diversify with like a one-off from the opposing team, something like that will like reduce the number of dupes. It's never like 150 people split the big prize. But yeah, and then obviously like a slate, like a 3-game slate is not going to be too duped.
Well, you bring up an interesting point. So when you have a sport like this where there's a winner and a loser, right? And it's funny that you bring up UFC as another sport that you kind of like,
Yeah.
and when it comes to say like a League of Legends, or we'll talk about Counter-Strike in a second, but League of Legends, I mean, if a team wins, pretty much the whole team is going to do well. I mean, there are some examples, but whatever. But if you have the losing team, you're just usually not winning. Okay, but you can,
Yeah.
whatever. And when you have UFC, same type of thing. Like most of the time, like the winning guy is the guy you're going to want to have enough where you really want to focus on that. And I'm interested. So with Counter-Strike, again, I've never played really.
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed to me, okay, let's go 3 from one team and 3 from another team in another game. You know what I mean? And just do max correlation and just roll with it.
Yeah.
How often do just straight 3 threes win as opposed to something else? I mean, have you done the work on that or?
I've not like measured the actual results, but anecdotally quite a bit.
Yeah.
I think that especially if you go with like there's typically like roles on a Counter-Strike team. So you have the sniper, you have the guy who goes in first into the bomb site. And then for like the defensive side, you usually have one guy for each bomb site. And then you have like a guy who's really bad at the game, not like bad, but like he's mostly the support guy. And so especially if you're playing like the support guy or like the 4th best guy on a team, those 3 threes are usually unique and there's decent upside in them. So yeah, I mean, 3 threes win probably like more than people want to admit. Because I know a lot of sharks like to,
Yeah, I
run
get
3,
it.
2, 1s.
I get it. So let me share you for a second, like how I've made all my money in my life. Okay, and then we're gonna do an experiment with Counter-Strike. So I mean, I've run a hedge fund for 20 years, and I am not actually equipped to do the real drill down analytics of the companies. Okay, I always have people do that for me. And what I am consider myself expert at is number one, figuring out which thing matters, and also figuring out how to put portfolios together, and seeing what correlates with what over correlates and this, that, the other thing. And I've always been kind of an expert at kind of aggregating information and leveraging in that way. And that's kind of way I started getting involved in some of these sports like League of Legends. I mean, what I would do is for example, like I go to Sabersim, right? We'll pull Sabersim, right? And typically what I would do when I would just get started out, I would look at the projections. I would, and this before I had any idea about what to do anything. And I would, just adjust it a little bit, run optimals, and then just kind of just like eyeball it and see, okay, what's low owned, and just kind of roll with it, And then with League of Legends, I decided, okay, what makes sense. I had Max on here, and he was telling me that that you should probably support shouldn't be in captain. So when I would roll like a Sabersim simulation out, and it would give me like 30 lineups, I would say, okay, no problem. I'll make it. I want all 4 threes, so then it'll automatically take those out. And then I would knock out the ones that had the support in the captain, and I would just roll with those. And you could actually, I mean, I'm not saying you could win long term just doing that, but you could give yourself passable, you know what I mean? Like you can give yourself passable builds that you could kind of enjoy yourself and just kind of learn or whatever it is. So let's talk about your work with Sabersim for a second. So I presume you do the projections for Sabersim?
Yeah. So the Counter-Strike model is one that I built. And then when I joined the company, it became integrated with Sabersim. And then the rest of the models are, I work with another person on our models team, and Matt, if you know him at Sabersim.
Of course.
So, I'm part of like a team, but the Counter-Strike model is like my baby. So
that's awesome. Yeah. So like I have the Sabersim thing up. So this was, what slate with this? Oh, this is the late 2-game slate. Now, first of all, just for terminology, Blast, what is that? Is that the name of the map or something?
Tournament organizer.
Oh, really? What do I know? Okay. And this is the actual. So I presume when people sweat, they would probably go on Juke or something like that. That's usually where you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just luckily Blast is YouTube streams, because for some reason I can't get Twitch or Juked on my Samsung TV, but I can just put it up on YouTube and have it in my office running.
Okay. So let's just say that we were going to build something, right? So you would go to, I have Sabersim. What I did, again, just to cheat a little bit, because DraftKings won't let you build it without whatever, is
Yeah.
I gave like a little half a point ding to like a couple of guys. And then I just kind of ran it, and I ran it with, I could do it again, doesn't make a difference. So I usually just keep the sliders. Well, for a sport I don't know, I just kind of keep the sliders sort of the same. But and again, this slate already happened, so it's actually just in the middle of happening right now. So it's not we're not like giving anything or whatever. And again, for those of you that want more information on how the Sabersim thing works, because Sabersim has literally zillions of videos on how all this stuff happens, and I've done one with Max before, whatever it is. But essentially, like the farther out to the right, this smart randomness slider goes, the more kind of like I don't want to say unique, but the more more random type lineups you're going to get, which is basically what you want in these type of 2-game slates with very few possibilities anyway. So what I did, just for purposes of this, I ran 20 lineups or whatever it is, and you see that if you use Sabersim, you already get Will's model preloaded in there. And if you just make a couple of tweaks, DraftKings won't yell at you, for building it. And so I'll get like a 20 prong lineup, like 20 lineup build like this. And the first thing that I would do is, again, I wouldn't just like download it and upload it. I would probably, the first thing I would just probably look at stack types just to see, what types of things would be part of the build. So like in a situation like this, again, I'm almost OCD purist. I'm like, well, why do I want to do a 3-0? You know what I mean? Like, well,
Yeah.
so if I were doing this for the first time, honestly, what I would do is probably just play the 3-2s and the 3-3s, because I don't know any better. You know what I mean? What would you do as a practical matter? Let's say you wanted to get started in Counter-Strike. You didn't want to drill down and do the kind of work that you do. You wanted to rely on Will's model that he's worked on for like quite some time, and had used Sabersim to help build lineups. Like if you were just going to start by doing like a build like this, how would you? I guess you could consider this like the post-build work. How would you tweak it from here? Like if you were going to advise somebody.
Yeah, I'm typically like 50% 3-2-1, 40% 3-3, and then like 1 to 2 lineups of like the other off build types. Cause like that 2-2-2, I can promise you that lineup's unique. Like I don't even have to look at the contest. I know nobody's playing that. So like there is value in playing it because there is, like things happen in Counter-Strike. Like the variance is definitely there. But I definitely don't want that to be like a centerpiece of my portfolio. So I'm usually like 50% 3-2-1, which is probably like the most frequent dupe adjusted binks, if you will.
Okay.
So like obviously like I'm not too interested in splitting with 100 people.
Yeah.
So I'll usually run like 3-2-1s is my primary, and then 3-3s. They're just great for reducing portfolio volatility. Because I usually go by the omega ratio, if you're familiar with it. It's used in portfolio optimization, but it's essentially like it's like the Sharpe ratio, but for non-normal distributions.
Yep.
So
again, so for people don't really, it's like a risk-adjusted return sort of. When I produce my portfolio results, it's one thing to tell people how you did, but this Sharpe ratio is basically a very well-known way of adjusting your returns for standard deviation and for risk-adjusted returns. So the omega ratio is something I don't use all too often, but that's kind of what Will's referring to when you have something with non-normal distributions. The omega ratio is another way to measure it in that way. So yeah, and again, I don't know any of these players. I don't know whatever it is, but is there a position that, or it doesn't really work that way with Counter-Strike? Are there positions or not really?
The sniper is always going to be the top protected player. There's like 2 teams where that's not the case. And they're typically who you want in captain. And obviously like there are riflers that get there, like Bit, Tabson, and Automatic. But like Simple and Searson are the snipers for their teams. And they are, if that team wins, they're going to be in the optimal, because the way snipers play is incentivized to not die. So instead of, trying to attempt to like recapture the ground or anything like that, they'll just sit back and, try and save their weapon for the next round. And so as a result of that, they usually have like plenty of rounds where they get, 2 to 3 kills and they don't die. And even though their team lost the round, they've had a pretty strong round for a DFS purpose. So like they're not classified as that in DraftKings itself because it's pretty like fluid in game, but like most teams have an established sniper.
So that's actually provides a little bit of an edge, right? So that you don't have to pick like an 80 carry, a top or a mid, whatever. It's just it's just 6 flexes and that's it, right?
Yep.
So if you weren't going to go rely on your model or something, you'd have to like do the research and figure out, which of these guys are going to generate fantasy points,
Yeah.
Okay. So that's to me, that's an edge right now. We're going to use Will's research to kind of come up with this. Here's another question I have, basically for all experts in non-traditional sports, not to say it that way, but okay, I don't want to say it another way. I was about to ask how projectable are the results, but that's not what I really want to ask. What I want to ask is I don't want to even say how accurate the projections are. What I want to say is how do the projections distribute? In other words, like when you take the NBA where it's pretty well known that the projections are sort of close to reality, and they kind of filter around the median a decent amount, as opposed to something like a hockey or a baseball where you'll get 0, 0, 0, 0, then you get a goal and whatever, or 0, you go 0 for 4, Trout goes 0 for 4, 3 games in a row, whatever it is. So baseball is not necessarily projectable in the purest sense, and football sort of in the middle. Like how projectable is a sport like Counter-Strike?
So all of these games like today that are in this blast tournament are best of 3s. And so it's essentially 4 modes distribution. And so I would say that with it, like if you told me 100% like this team is going to win 2-0, then very projectable. But just going off of like the, probability of all 4 outcomes, that definitely reduces it, because like if you tell me a team is going to lose 0-2, they're not going to score anything really that close to their projection, or vice versa for like 2-0, they're going to like massively crush it. So in that sense, within each distribution or within each mode, definitely is. But
so if you get the game right, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you get the winner right, then you're probably going to be close enough. With whereas opposed to, I mean, obviously you get the game wrong. It's same as I guess similar to UFC, but not really, right? UFC, a win is not necessarily the end of the story, right? Like, win, you got to win, or you got to win. We got to win fast, or you got to win with a lot of takedowns and
you got to wrestle or win fast.
Yeah, you got to win. That's right. You got to wrestle or win fast. Okay. What as far as what type of stuff do you play? Do you play do you play mostly GPPs or mostly cash or both?
Yes, I actually just started doing cash like yesterday. One of my friends stuck me into it. For GPPs, I just spam the 10 and the 180. Because those are the top 2, like they're usually 5K to first and 2K to first. So, I can, if everything goes right, that's a 10x day.
Let me ask you this. This is something I was thinking about. So, and I think about it with respect to League of Legends. I have to believe it's similar to this. What is the maximum amount of entries you can enter into the big GPP? 60?
Yeah, I think it's like 52 today.
52. Okay. So my thesis and my theory is with the LOL, especially League of Legends, especially with the 2 game slates, is that most of the people that max enter are throwing money away. That the chances of the bottom 30, or I don't know the number, doing well enough to make up for the dupes that you're going to win even when you win, is I don't say throw money away, but I think part of winning at the big GPPs in this type of sport with all these dupes possible is literally figuring out how many entries to play. Because I mean, look, if you gave me 1,000 entries, I can come up with the optimal in League of Legends. But you want the optimal to be the one that that doesn't split with 200 people or something like that. Do you think about that? But like, let's say you were going to run lineups, and I don't know how many you normally play, but if you were going to play, say, 20 lineups, do you, when you look at it, say, okay, unless it's going to project, okay, I'm going to say project from a points perspective, but let's say you want to rate them based on either Saber score, or you can talk a little bit about what that means, or you want to make sure it has an ownership of X. I mean, is there like a cutoff where you won't go below a certain, you won't go above a certain amount of entries? Do you max enter? When do you comment on any of that a little bit?
Yeah, so I max enter every day.
Okay.
When the slate starts, I pull in the actual contest CSV and compare all the lineups against the sim, and I essentially see what everyone's EV is.
Okay.
And there's like a couple of people that are max entering with negative EV. But usually like there's, I think, a good like 5 to 6 people regularly max entering, regularly positive EV. And like some of them are only like, a couple bucks in positive EV, but it's there. So I mean, I feel like, given the understatement of variance, that like the cutoff is higher than what they usually put the max limits at.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I haven't run into a scenario where I'm not max entering yet.
Why don't you try? Why, you know what? If you get bored, okay. What now? I don't know if this is relevant, but I wonder if you just ran. Okay, so you pull in the CSV, just after the slate starts, and you calculate their expected EV based on your projections, right? So I wonder if you just calculated the EV of the, not even the EV, but the expected EV of the bottom X projected lineups, right?
Yeah.
And then compare that to actual results of those bottom 20 lineups. I just wonder how relevant, I mean, how what that data would look like.
Yeah, I feel like that would be a really interesting analysis to try and figure out the cutoff point.
So that is interesting, because I see there was like a legal legislation a couple of days ago where there was a guy who wasn't even expected to play, and it turns out he ended up playing, and a couple of guys had him in the, because they max entered. I firmly believe that was just by accident. You know what I mean? They could tell me it was on purpose, that, oh no, because there's always a chance. I put that in my model. There's a chance. I don't believe a word of that.
I don't buy that. Yeah.
No, exactly.
I believe everyone's playing expected starters unless they mess something up.
Yeah, exactly. So you play now with respect to cash. I don't want to say how's it going so far, but why did you not do cash? Now again, I have my own answers, but why did you not do cash, and why did you decide to do cash?
So I initially tried cash in the summer, and I ran for a week straight. That week I had 2 GPP banks, and I didn't win my cash head-to-heads, like just the entire week. So I was just like, this isn't, I'm just throwing money away. But that was part of it, was I was overthinking it. I was creating hypothetical lineups that my opponents would play in head-to-heads.
Oh, you got fancy. Okay.
I got way too fancy with it, and so now I'm just playing my highest median projected lineup.
Yeah.
So I'll just run all the lineups against 20,000 sims and take the highest median. So hopefully that works.
We'll see how it goes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But let me ask you, when you build a cash lineup for a sport like Counter-Strike, do you just run an optimal, or do you go for correlation as well? Or I guess it's the same thing, I suppose.
Yeah, I'd go for optimal. I think if I was like hand building it, or if I had like the time to give it a bit more attention, or if like new to it, there's definitely value in looking at. So I feel like the field typically thinks all players are equally correlated. I feel like there's sort of this baseline assumption that like the win of the team, rising tide raises all boats, like, but it seems like people treat, the probability that these two Z scores are going to come out the same is equal. And there's definitely like, that's not the case. Like, a sniper and the person who runs into the bomb site first are going to be slightly less positively correlated, because the entry fragger is eating away at some of the kills that the sniper would otherwise get. So there is, I think, some edge in that sense of like those players who, like, if somebody projects 1 point worse at the median, but there's somebody who works well with like the sniper, or like because you're in cash, I don't think there's ever really a lineup that you're playing without the snipers in it.
With sports betting becoming now legal in several states, including New York, well, I can't even tell you what's been going on here in New York in the last month.
I've heard like $5,000 sign up bonuses.
It's, let me tell you, between you, me and the wall, I spent really the last 2 weeks not doing nothing but probably spending an hour and a half a day just helping people out grind these bonuses. And it's actually somewhat interesting. Like some of the bonuses that involve the free bets are
Mhm.
kind of really interesting, because it's not technically free. I mean, they don't give you a site credit. They give you just this free bet, so you don't get your stake back. So
Yeah.
what you can do is you could just do kind of cool little arbitrages where you bet the underdog when it's a free bet and you offset it with, if you do some good odd shopping, where you could capture about sometimes like 70% of the free bet. And it's I was able to get it for like a couple of friends, several $1,000s, like with no risk over the last
Yeah.
couple of weeks. I bring that up because I brought up Prize Picks for a second. Do you do any of that? Do you do any non-DFS related stuff, either Prize Picks or straight betting or anything like that?
I played around with straight betting. It was really good. I think it was last summer there's a player break where the top teams in the world are not playing, and you essentially get like, the random Russian kids that are playing
Okay.
at, I would say probably like a minor league equivalency level. And so straight betting was really good there because they play a lot. There's a lot of good data on them. And the books just kind of seem to be like pricing it as like, oh, we don't know. So I was doing it that then. And I've played around with Price Picks a little, but I am not a fan of being forced to parlay.
Yeah.
That's like, if they would just give me straight up lines on these, I would take it in a heartbeat.
Right.
But yeah, no, parlay is not my favorite thing to do.
No.
But I definitely think that like you can, I think they're missing the correlation as well between, because I'm pretty sure you can do like a player and then a player on his opposing team in your like 2-pick parlay, or at least you used to be able to.
So you want to go like over and one and under the other, you mean?
Yeah. And if you're like smart about who you pick, like if you pick, one team's entry fragger and the opposing team's sniper.
Well, let's
Usually.
have some fun. So like, for example, and this already started, so there's no way that we could profit from this.
Mhm.
But let's just say I want to do that, because I know there's some people that want to degen Prize Picks and do whatever.
Yeah.
So let's just say I was going to like pull up your, these are projections, right?
Yeah, I don't think we have the stats.
No,
showing
you
up on the
don't.
site
That's
yet.
right. You don't
Yeah.
have the drill down for the.
I believe
kills.
that. So we've updated we created a League of Legends simulator as well. So like that update, I believe, is bringing like the kills and the stats to that. So I think that we'll likely be able to bring that over here.
Yeah, here we just have the projections and the distribution. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that could be interesting. So I know people are going to want that.
Mhm.
They're going to want it. They're going to want to bet on these outright. I know on Nitrogen, I think you could bet on the actual results
Yeah.
as well. Let me ask you this, kind of personally, can you make money? I mean, I don't, you're only 22, whatever, but I mean, you're making enough. I would say making enough money, but do you wish it was bigger? I mean, do you wish the tournaments were bigger, or you kind of good with your buy-ins and stuff?
I mean, I'm not too concerned with it. I think I would be worried if the tournaments got bigger, just because like,
So I was
I
going to
mean,
say.
I would draw semi-frequently. Like, I got a new car, we got an apartment,
Nice.
So like, I don't want to really I don't like depositing money. Nobody does. So I kind of like where my, can
That's
keep
great.
doing 2 to 3% of my bankroll. And then it's also when the tournaments are only like 1,700 entries, like you can realize that edge really quickly because you're just competing against less people. So the variance decreases. So I mean, like, I'm not upset with them just keeping it at 5K forever.
That's great. What about do they have this? They don't have it on FanDuel, right?
They'll bring it back for like one day with $100 max prize pool. No one will play it, and then they'll never do it again. So they keep doing that for like a random slate, and it's always weird. They have a team spot actually.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and it's weird because the League of Legends is definitely a sport that supports having a team slot. Counter-Strike is not. Like there's just not a lot of stats that aggregate to the team level. So I think they were going with like bomb defusals as one of them, which is just it's pointless because that's not the only way to win a round. And, taking a Baron or taking a Dragon is pretty crucial to winning the game. So
I presume there's no late swap, right?
no.
Let me suggest something else. Let me throw this out there. Did you ever, and again, this is what I think about with the advent of the sports betting thing, because when I first got into DFS, I mean, I don't bet sports. I don't do anything where I don't have an edge, if you want to know the truth.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah. And that's why I don't bet sports. But I was asking Bobby, and he's the guy I do DFS stuff with. I was asking him about DFS experts. Is there anybody that kind of like puts all this stuff together? Like if there's sports betting experts out there, or even self-proclaimed sports betting experts, there's got to be people that they say, okay, I have this particular data on a particular player on a particular game. What's the most efficient way to make use of that? Is it better to play, to play, what's his name? Strickland in DFS, or is it better to just bet him to win in a sports betting situation?
Yeah.
Is it better to play a pairs trade, so to speak, where you could go, you could play do a prop at Maximoff over and takedowns, but it's probably better to go against him in the actual game or something, in the actual fight or something like that. And to have like sports betting, have all these different live betting and all this different stuff. What I think about now is, let's just say you play like a whole bunch of DFS, right? And you, after say like a couple of games like the NBA, have a just incredible lineup, but you have like a couple of things needed to go. You could use the sports betting market to do kind of in-game like prop bet hedges and stuff like that, to kind of like, and you could go bananas with this stuff. And Rosie, I bring it up with you is if you ever did this, if you ever played a CS Counter-Strike slate, it's a 3-game slate. Game 1, you get the nuts. Game 2, you get the nuts. Game 3, you just have to fade one thing, but there's nothing you can really do about it. Do you ever go into the sports betting market to try to like just figure out someone, without making a bad bet, right? But if it's kind of a neutral bet, I mean, do you ever consider that part of the whole portfolio of action going on?
So I haven't done it. I try my best not to sweat the slate as it goes, just like for my health. Like I will not. I at least try not to watch the slate too much. I watch the games, but I mean, as far as my lineups themselves, but like pre-slate, I've definitely looked into, especially given how much like a win or loss decides a team's score, hedging out the outcomes that I'm weak on. So like if I, I'm overexposed to one team winning, and I can increase my omega ratio by like taking the underdog or taking the opponent. I looked into it. I am not a huge crypto person, so I don't particularly love having to buy crypto to get it into an offshore book. It's not my favorite thing to do.
Right.
But I do think that sort of like at least the end game of DFS is just arbing ownership against lines.
Yep.
Like I think that's where we're all headed.
Where are you? Where are you with ownership projections?
Those are So I essentially I take Vegas odds directly, and then I regress people's stats, and I convert it into a multivariate normal distribution. So like I essentially give everybody like the base correlation that the field is assuming, and strip out some of like the nuance that my projections give. And I create sort of like a field pool of lineups. And then the aggregate percentages from that field pool is what creates my own category. And then when I do like slate sim specifically prior to the slate, I just take a random subsampling. So like if I have 10,000 field lineups, I'll take a random subsample of 1,700 to represent the field in that, individual sim.
So let me backtrack what you said. So one of the things that I tell people, because I do for the sports where you have like a lot of different ownership projections, I track them all. I literally track, and I back test them for accuracy, and I came up with a kind of a cool aggregate system, whatever it is. But with sports that don't have too many people doing it, it's kind of pointless. But one thing I do tell people is that if you starve for ownership projections, what you can just do is go to your favorite freaking site, just take the projections, run 1,000 lineups, and that's probably what to some degree what the ownership is going to look like. But what you said that you kind of just went through is that if you're going to do that, with yours, like you said, you kind of strip out your nuance, so to speak. So
Yeah.
so you kind of give your own kind of like take on top of what is normal. I don't say it the wrong way, right? So when you're trying to come with ownership is, what are people going to play if they don't know what I know, right?
Yeah.
So that makes sense. So like, so if you guys wanted to do that, like with a sport like this, I would say just go to, I don't know, some of the bigger sites that don't have, I don't want to give too many plugs away, but you know who they are, and who will just not have the same amount of nuance, so to speak. Run 1,000 lineups and then say, okay, what's the most, what looks to be like the highest owned situation. And then what I would do is really, and this is what I tried to do before I got on here. I ran 20 lineups with using your model, and then I ran 20 lineups using another ones. And I just wanted to see, just interestingly, like how many lineups were the same, out of 20. And there were actually, I did 20 of one and 20 of the other, and there were actually only six lineups that appeared in both.
Interesting.
In both of them, which I find somewhat interesting.
I think I can tell you the 2 players who are the root cause of that too.
Oh, you think? Okay, all right.
Yeah, everyone. Yeah, Favin and Automatic are they're 2 players that a lot of players are new to teams because like we just came off of the off season, but they're definitely, some people are really high on Favin, some people are really low on Automatic.
Okay.
And I think that's
well, you brought up, I can't believe I didn't ask this. This is like the main question I asked for everybody. I'm totally spaced over this. Okay. With respect to chalk in this particular sport, and again, I don't know anything about it, right? What type of chalk, qualitatively, is fadeable, and what type of chalk is just non-fadeable? Now, I'll preface this way. Like if you get like a 3K guy in the NBA who's going to start at point guard and project for 34 minutes, you're just not fading, right?
Yeah.
But you get a wide receiver in the NFL who's chalk at 9,400. You know what I mean? So what types of chalk in this type of sport are fadeable versus what type of chalk are non-fadeable?
Yeah. So I think you have a perfect slate pulled up for that, because simple right there. There's like, so for reference, that the first map wrapped right before we jumped on here, and he scored 55 points in map 1. The next highest person was like 20. He's undisputed. He's like the greatest player to ever play the game. So there's some times where like I'd probably play him at like 12K and 90% owned. Like it's just, he's a free square. He's that good. The team is built around him. The only way that he's not getting there is if they get absolutely crushed, and being that they're the best team in the world right now, not likely.
So it's not because of the value, it's because of well, it is sort of, I was gonna say, but it's because of the raw points, right? It's not because.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's basically like there's you're much more likely to just find value elsewhere to build in around him.
Okay.
Because he's just always, I think I had his 95th percentile 13 points higher than like the next highest person on the slate. And that's like including other big favorites and other snipers on those teams. So there's definitely, you can fade somebody like in this same example, like Big here. Searson is their sniper. He has the highest ceiling on that team. But like they have 2 really good rifers in Favin and Thompson. So like he's a lot more fadeable just because of that. Like they'll be a little self-competitive. Whereas like a team where it's really just like one star player, you don't want to fade them if they have any chance of winning.
So it's the star player that is, see, because that's the difference, right? So like in the NBA, to take the example, it's the 3K scrub who's non-fadeable.
Yeah.
Where
exactly.
I guess you're saying in this sport, it's the $9,800 grappler who's, you know what I mean, who's
yeah
who's 12 to 1, right? He's something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Or 30 to 1 or something like that. You're just not fading that.
Yeah, he's 12 to 1, and he's going to shoot a takedown and hold them down for 10 seconds and let him up and do it again.
Yeah, exactly. Well, listen, this has been, oh, you know what? I do want to just throw in a couple, because there were a couple of questions I had from the Discord. They were probably covered, but I just wanted, just in case they were not, let me, maybe one day you guys will get over to Discord like the rest of the world.
I think we're planning on it.
Okay. One guy says, building 1 to 2 lineups. How do we determine which players from a team in LOL I find myself which position or whatever it is, top lane or whatever. Okay, so to kind of interpret this, are there like you said, like positions that matter more? I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, if I'm just building 1 to 2 lineups, I would 100%, it would have 2 snipers in it for sure. I'd probably play like a 3-3 and put 2 snipers in it. And then I would just take a look through recent game logs. There's hltv.org is like the primary data source.
HLTV.org.
Yep. So they have basically every game or every like professional match of CSGO played in like the past 5 or 10 years is on there, with like in-depth map statistics. So just like going through recent game logs for the team and seeing who does well with that player, is really like, I think probably a good place to find edge, just like in seeing what players correlate better than others. So.
And this other one is how do you pick? Okay, now I'm saying how do you pick the captain spot? I guess you just, I don't know, I guess that's kind of a weird question. How do you pick the upsets that you like? I'll let you try to answer this if you want. Some guy wants to know, how do you pick the captain spots? How do you pick the upsets? And then what are your favorite stacking? We talked about that. Is there anything you want to add, like suddenly, like how do you pick captains, or how do you, what kind of upsets usually are worked out? Or
in captain, you never really want to play the value guy. Your captain almost always needs to be the first or second highest scorer on the slate. There's just like, there can be like, some weird things where like the guy's 3% owned and he won't be the optimal captain, but for the most part, you want raw points in captain. And then upsets, I usually don't think about it too much. My model is usually pretty close to Vegas and I just kind of let it go. I think people see, oh, they're a plus 200 dog and they don't realize that that's still, 30% of the time that they're winning. So.
All right, so I like to summarize a couple of things. First of all, is that if you guys are going to play this sport, and I recommend doing it just again because I just enjoy the intellectual challenge of a new sport. I can't, but if you're going to do it, I mean, look, you guys, I'm really honest with you. I wouldn't tell you this if I didn't believe it. I would really start by doing just what I said. Just go into Sabersim, looking what Will has created, building lineups that way, throwing in your own, kind of 2 cents or whatever it is, but and make the correct types of stacking decisions. And I'd be actually curious to know what happens because we've done this before. A couple of guys in my Discord, my site, they did this when I started putting out the League of Legends, like aggregated stuff, and they said they started running stuff like 12 days in a row. They just kept running 20 lineups with whatever I threw up there, and it was profitable. Whatever it is, not 20 slates doesn't means anything, but it's better than losing, right? And so I definitely recommend doing that. I certainly am going to be, if I'm in Virginia for whatever, visiting my son, I'm totally gonna throw something in there. But on a personal level, just as being a 22-year-old kid, I want to wish you luck. I don't know where you're going to be in 5-10 years. You're going to be doing something very, very smart. You're going to be making money and happiness for yourself in some way. I don't know whether it's going to be for this or something else, but just keep your head on straight. It seemed like you're ahead of the game as far as that goes, and keep putting your brain to good use. And as I tell my son, this is why I still do this at 55. I always, even though I have my hedge fund, I always had something going on, whether it's going to be poker, whether it's be backing in poker, whether it's going to be chess, backgammon, or DFS now. The brain is like any other freaking organism. If you don't use it every day, it's going to atrophy like any other muscle. So I wish you luck. You seem to be a really, really sharp kid. And good luck with Sabersim. I obviously always recommend that. And thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's great talking to you.
Okay, let me just stop recording.